Hi, Dr. Dan Kalish here, and welcome to our free webinar on H. pylori, put on in conjunction with our partner Diagnostic Solutions Lab. And we're going to be talking about the GI map and specifically how you deal with H. pylori. We have a special feature to this class today, which is that we have requested and have received GI maps from audience members, from some of you who are on our VIP list, and we're going to review those actual tests. So I'm going to go through the slides like super fast because we all want to get to the labs. I think we had more labs submitted than I'm going to have time to go through, and I apologize for that. I'm just going to go through them in the order in which we received them, and then we'll have to stop when the time is up. So if I don't get to your lab, it's nothing personal. It just means that we ran out of time. So I'm going to introduce myself if you're new to me and new to all of this. Then we're going to skip through some slides kind of quickly, and then we're going to get into some lab interpretation. So for those of you that are brand new to all of this and to me, I am Dr. Dan Kalish. I've been around for 30 years. I've been teaching for 25 years in this space. We train thousands and thousands of practitioners. I've worked with the Mayo Clinic. In fact, in the Mayo Clinic research study that we did together, 8 out of the 9 patients with H. pylori, we got rid of the H. pylori with the exact protocols that I teach in these kinds of courses. So this stuff actually works. Mayo Clinic verified in a research study that you can get H. pylori with natural programs if you're doing it right and you're structuring it properly. Been in practice for a long time, and I'm really focused primarily on building successful functional medicine practices. That's our goal. And teaching doctors 2 skills: lab interpretation skills and patient communication skills, patient management skills, both of which are important. And you know, I was in class all morning. This morning is one of my heavy teaching days with all the mentorship, more advanced students. And it's great to see 6 months into a training program, how people are getting it. People are resubmitting their second GI map. This just happened like an hour or two ago. Here's my second GI map, Dr. Kalish. The SIG-A is way better. That's amazing. And in fact, true story, the H. pylori is gone. That's incredible. But she still has dysbiosis. What do I do next? You know, so you're getting to the point where patients are getting better, you're retesting, you're really seeing how cases work and how to manage cases. And that's really what the courses that I teach are all about. So we have a couple of special offers. Speaking of courses that we have a super special GI Map Bootcamp that starts in May. And if you're listening to this, you can use that QR code, scan that, you get 20% off the cost of the class. So this is a really great course. We've run this several times. It gets into depth on how to interpret the GI map. And in this class, you also will submit labs, but it'll be a much smaller group. So every lab that you submit during the bootcamp, we will review as a group together and help design protocols so you can figure out how to structure patient programs. It's exciting to turn people onto this stuff, and it's exciting to see new practitioners really learn how to embody these kinds of tests and make use of them. So that's coming up. If you really want to know how to do the GI map, join that group. And if you're just kind of, I don't really know, I'm interested in this, but I'm not that interested in really like changing my whole life and practice around, then take this class. This is our master class. We don't offer it at a discount very often. So you get like a week. You have until April 1st. You can get the masterclass for half off. There's no live calls associated with that. I'm not going to help you review labs, but it'll give you a general introduction to the GI map if you just want to spend a small dollar amount and check it out and see a little bit more information about the GI map. So the boot camp is for serious people. The half off on the masterclass is for people that are just kind of checking it out and thinking about it. So we want to talk mostly about H. pylori. I'm going to spend about 20 minutes going through the slides, and we're going to do the rest of the session. We're going to go through labs. So I'm going to skip some of these slides because they're kind of details you don't really need to know for the interpretation part. But I want to just drive home one central message with the slides, just one message. In fact, we could just have one slide, and it would probably be okay. I've been thinking about that, single slide lectures. But anyways, the one message is H. pylori causes all kinds of different problems throughout the body because of what happens when you get H. pylori to your ability to digest and absorb protein. Because H. pylori causes a big problem there. And when you don't get enough amino acids in your system, lots of bad things happen in lots of different parts of your body. People get tired. People have liver detoxification clearance problems. People can't make enough glutathione. People can't make enough dopamine or serotonin. People have every problem that you could imagine because of an H. pylori infection. And we've seen them all. We've seen them all. If someday I've said this for years, I want to write a book about this. We had a doctor in one of my classes. Okay, we had a doctor in one of my classes who, a male, who was getting recurrent bladder infections, not the most common thing for a male. His name was Neil, and I remember this so clearly. He treated his H. pylori, and his recurrent bladder infection stopped. And he's talking about this in the mentorship class, and we're like, okay, well, that's a coincidence, Neil. Okay. And then that was fine for a while. And then like a few months later, he got another bladder infection and the H. pylori had come back and he treated it a second time. And when he knocked out the H. pylori completely, we never had another bladder infection. I mean, the strangest things happen. Anxiety, depression, fatigue, that's like garden variety stuff you're going to see all the time when you get rid of H. pylori. In children, we have some special considerations. You'll see kids who are nauseous and just don't feel like eating, and they get strange with food. Oftentimes, if they're teenage girls, they may even be identified as having an eating disorder because they eat and then they throw up, but they're not bulimic. They have an H. pylori infection. I'm not saying bulimia doesn't exist, but there's plenty of mostly girls out there who are throwing up and being misdiagnosed as having a eating disorder when in fact they have a stomach infection. So sleep problems through the roof. People wake up at 2 in the morning. They don't realize it's because their stomach hurts, but they can't sleep through the night. Get rid of the H. pylori. They'll come back in and say, I don't know what happened, but I can sleep through the night for the first time in 20 years. So H. pylori causes problems like you can't believe. And you wouldn't believe unless you'd actually seen them. So common symptoms, this is the obvious stuff, but everybody knows that. It causes upper GI symptoms, but that's not what we're really interested in. That's what it looks like. Causes damage to the stomach lining. There's a really important document you might want to read sometime, which is the Nobel Prize. The Nobel Prize was given out for these doctors that discovered, or researchers that discovered that H. pylori causes ulcers in like 90% of the cases. And in that Nobel Prize Committee report, there's this one line in there that I think about constantly, and it says, although something along the lines of, although H. pylori doesn't cause symptoms in every person, it always causes inflammation in the body. Everybody that has H. pylori has inflammation from the H. pylori. And what does inflammation cause? Diabetes, cardiovascular disease, autoimmune problems. I mean, if you look up any kind of longevity medicine kind of thing, the first thing that people are talking about is inflammation and how bad that is for your body. So H. pylori absolutely doesn't have to cause any kind of GI symptoms to be a problem. And in fact, most of the time, it doesn't cause GI symptoms. It causes symptoms in other parts of the body. Now, and there's one message for today, right? Which is that when you have H. pylori, it may decrease your ability to digest dietary protein. Now, what's kind of interesting is that your gut bacteria also produce proteins. Who would have thought that that's even possible? Yeah, they do. They have their own little thing going on here. And I'm just summarizing these slides because today is more of a lab review session than a lecture. But you should know this. This is pretty basic here. And it's not basic in like it's, like when you wake up in the morning, you think about it, but it's basic like physiology. Is here we have the gut microbiota. Here we have genes and proteins, and then we have metabolites, okay? And so in general, the gut microbiome itself has, and there's like what, anywhere from, depending on who you read, 10 trillion to 100 trillion of these organisms. The gut, each gut bacteria has its own genes, which means it's making its own proteins. And then those, the byproducts of all that gut bacteria, good gut bacteria activity, are all these metabolites. And that has a huge impact on the body, okay? And everybody in this system, you and these gut bacteria, are completely relying upon amino acids because the only way you're going to make any kind of a protein, you or your gut bacteria, is with amino acids. So if you want this process to carry on well, you have to have enough amino acids. And here's just a quickie on how you do that process, right? You take your amino acids, you string them together, use your ribosomes and endoplasmic reticulum and all this stuff, and eventually you end up forming a protein. But the only way you can do that is if you have enough free amino acids to make the protein. And this is one of the crippling things that H. pylori causes. If you also have a gut bacteria imbalance, the commensal bacteria are off, that's going to exacerbate the problem even more because these gut bacteria are responsible or require amino acids to make their own proteins also. Okay. And just to point out that the genes in these gut bacteria, again, it's based on that first diagram, and you can read more about this. Here's the paper. Let me show you. Here we go. Moya and Ferrer. The genes of these bacteria, they need the same amino acids that we use. The exact same 20 amino acids are used by both. So why is this so important? Because H. pylori is in your stomach. Even if you have no symptoms, it's going to interfere with stomach acid production, which is where you start the breakdown process of protein into amino acids. So if that's happening, you're going to have amino acid deficiencies, and that's going to throw off everything, okay? If you have a very strong, robust, healthy microbiome, you can deal with that. But most of these patients don't. Their microbiome is just trashed, and that's why the H. pylori is a problem in the first place. So there's a strong relationship between these two things. In fact, we had a patient a few weeks ago in the mentorship group, no symptoms, perfectly healthy, commensal bacterial markers on the GI map just lined up like ideally, like almost so. And in fact, I think I said this in class. I said, like, that's so perfect, it's kind of like annoying. If you ever seen somebody, you go out, if this happens in New York, right? You go out in New York and someone's dressed and they're just dressed so perfectly. And then you look at their shoes, you're like, oh my God, they even got the nice shoes. It's like a little annoying. It's like a little too much. People that really dress well, they have one thing that's a little off, you know? But this microbiome test was perfect, okay? And if you have that, the H. pylori is going to be, I would say, negated in terms of its negative effects, negated, okay? So, but that's not the case that we're talking about. And here's a little thing about the genes that these good gut bacteria are, the functions of the genes of these good gut bacteria. For example, they make folate. They help with bile acids. They help make butyrate. Butyrate travels to your brain, has a very strong positive effect on your brain. So if we're losing amino acids and our gut bacteria are not in good shape, the good ones, then you're going to have all kinds of huge problems. Now, organisms like H. pylori can be classified as a pathogen, meaning they're disease causing. They can be classified as sort of neutral, meaning they're not causing any problems. And in some cases, H. pylori can even be considered to be helpful for the body. But the patients that we're talking about, I guarantee you, the vast majority of time are having a problem with H. pylori, and you're going to want to get rid of it. And the GI map is really the best test to find that, okay? So poor amino acid absorption, this is the whole theme of today. That's the one thing we want to remember. If you have H. pylori, you're going to have poor amino acid absorption. It's going to starve your good gut bacteria of amino acids. It's going to starve your body. What do you make out of proteins? What do you do with the proteins? Well, number one, you make antibodies. Now we're wondering why Neil had that bladder infection all the time. Antibodies are only made from amino acids. You don't have enough amino acids, you don't have enough antibodies. All enzymes, the enzymes that have to do with the citric acid cycle, all of those are proteins. If you don't have enough amino acids, your mitochondria are going to fall apart. You're going to be tired all the time. The list goes on and on and on. Hemoglobin, just to carry oxygen around, you have to make proteins. Hemoglobin is a protein. If you don't have enough amino acids, you're not going to be able to make enough hemoglobin, and then your whole body is going to be just like oxygen not rich, oxygen poor, okay? Your neurotransmitters, all of these things rely on amino acids for production. So when people get H. pylori, they can get sick all the time because the antibodies are screwed up. They can be tired because their mitochondria is screwed up. They can be, depressed and anxious because their brain is screwed up. It's the least of the problem is what's happening in the gut. And the mistake you want to avoid is only treating H. pylori if they have gut symptoms. The mistake you want to avoid is only treating H. pylori if they have gut symptoms. All these other things are happening. Here's the 20 amino acids that we're worried about. And let's see here. Again, I'm skipping through the slides because we're going to primarily look at labs today. I think there's one more I want to wrap up with here. Oh, here, yeah. So the treatment options. So you always want to test and correct the adrenal hormones and the stress response as part of treating H. pylori. That's just a given that you want to address the entire person. You want to have their diet be better and exercise and sleep and address sleep. Just address stress hormones. That's part of an H. pylori program. And part of the reason why they're having an H. pylori problem is because they're stressed out of their mind. So you want to do that. Then when you get to the killing phase for H. pylori, you can either use antibiotics or herbal products. In the Mayo Clinic study we did, 8 out of 9 times we got rid of the H. pylori with the herbs. So you don't have to use medication. There's some times when medications are way more appropriate based on the patient, but you can do it either way. And then as soon as that's clear, you want to get all the GI stuff repaired. That's all the things, bad things that have happened, okay? Adrenal programs are key, and here are the key concepts. So it damages the stomach lining. It reduces stomach acid production, so amino acids are not properly absorbed. That's the big problem here. That's the one central concept. Why does that matter so much? Because we need amino acids to make all proteins, immunoglobulins, hemoglobin, every single thing that runs your mitochondria, everything that runs your heart, everything that runs your liver. These are all proteins. We turn over or make 300 to 400 grams of protein every day. Let me say that again. In your body, you produce, this is not from diet. I mean, nobody can eat, if you tried to eat 400 grams of protein, it would be a bad experience. I mean, anyone who studied nutrition knows that would, I don't know, maybe somebody that's doing a hot dog eating contest could do that, but no normal human being can eat 400 grams of protein in a day. We're not talking about dietary sources. We're talking about your body produces from scratch. It makes 400 grams, 300 to 400 grams of protein per day. It's a massive amount. It has to have amino acids to do that. Some of those come from your diet, obviously. Some of those come from you breaking down old proteins and then recycling the amino acids. But if you're not getting what you need from your diet for long enough, your overall supply of amino acids is going to drop. And then you're going to have an immune problem. You're going to have a neurotransmitter problem. You're going to have a mitochondrial problem. That's why H. pylori is so important. Out of all the infections, it's the worst place in your body to have an infection is right in your stomach, right where you're breaking down your protein. It's not a good scenario for people. It's extra bad, extra bad. So that's the big concept. The next concept is that it causes chronic inflammation in everybody, whether they have GI symptoms or not. It makes no difference. And that inflammation is deleterious to every system in the body. We want to reduce inflammation. So we want to strengthen the secretory IgA levels. You'll see that on the GI maps in a second. You want to kill the bugs that you find in the labs, and many times there's more than just one. And then you want to recolonize. If you joined us late, we have a GI map boot camp. We don't offer these very often. So if you're a GI map aficionado, just sign up for the class. It's a couple months. It's not like a huge chunk of your life, but you'll be an expert at the end of this. I will drill you on this. We will meet regularly and have sessions where we review your labs. We'll be going over every lab for every student every time we meet. So you'll be able to design programs for yourself, for your patients, and really get a feel for how this works. And what's even more important is when you do these group classes, you will see dozens of other GI maps from other practitioners. So you really start to get a feel for how this test works in different scenarios. You get 20% off. That offer expires on the 15th of April, and the class starts in mid-May. So you have a little bit of time to sign up for that, but not too much. And then if that's too much for you to handle, we have our GI map masterclass, no live calls. It's just a few hours of content about how to interpret the test. Okay, the boot camp is 1,000 times better. The masterclass is good, but the boot camp is where people really start to learn how to do the work. All right, so if you have questions, type them in. For now, we're going to start. And again, I want to thank the people that submitted labs. And it's our special VIP group. They're people that have done this other class with us. So, and now I'm going to start. Let's see here. We're not going to be able to get through them all. I apologize for that in advance. But let's see. We got to make sure that the person is actually on the line here. So I'm looking to see. Oh yeah, this does this. Wow, there's a lot of you. This is a huge group. Okay, hang on a second. I got to scroll to the top. Give me one sec. Is Alyssa here? Alyssa is here. Look at that. Alyssa, we got your lab.
Oh,
Can you hear me there?
Yes.
This should be your test popping up right now.
Great.
Look at that.
See.
Awesome. All right, tell us about the patient and what we want to achieve here.
I'm just trying to remember actually which test this is that I submitted.
Well,
Which
it's got
patient?
H. pylori, which is good.
Let's see.
Let's see what else is going on. There's some dysbiosis, but not too bad. 3 of the dysbiosis markers are high. And then a little bit going on the intestinal side. So elastase being low, meaning they need pancreatic enzymes.
Mm-hmm.
Thigay is normal, which is good.
Mm-hmm.
And do you remember what the symptoms are?
I think I'm remembering, I think it's my 45-year-old perimenopausal woman with actually minimal GI complaints, mostly fatigue, brain fog, and some bloating after she couldn't elucidate like what meals caused the bloating, but more bloated in the afternoon. But that was the only GI symptom that I actually remember. It was more brain fog, fatigue was the main complaint, and anxiety.
Yeah, so you will almost always see a reduction in fatigue. You will sometimes see a reduction in depression and anxiety, but almost always a reduction in fatigue if you just get rid of the H. pylori. It's just that
Mm-hmm.
simple. Just get rid of it and then see what happens, And so I kind of hinted at this earlier. If you want to have some kind of an initial program before you just go after H. pylori. You can't just meet a patient, see they have H. pylori, and then go after it immediately. That just
Mm-hmm.
doesn't work. It's just too much too quickly. So the preparation work that I like to recommend is you do an adrenal test, and then you get, the stress under control, some diet stuff, some whatever they need for their sleep or whatever. And now you could also have the opening salvo be like a female hormone balancing program. You give them some progesterone or whatever they need, or it really could be anything. It could be a liver detox program, just something to calm their system down a little bit before you do the killing. And you have a
Uh-huh.
month or two where you're improving the diet and getting them de-stressed. If you've been working with her for a while, she may already be there. In
Mm-hmm.
which case, even just the hormones, the female hormones is enough. Something that just calms the system down and gives a person a month or two to get a little bit better. And then you can go after the H. pylori. So then,
Okay.
and it's a pretty straightforward protocol. And there's got to be a half a dozen different companies that have this. I'm just going to do it, not product name, but just ingredient wise. Mastica is for sure the best thing that I've seen for H. pylori. And tons of different companies have Mastica containing products. And you want to get the dose, depending on which brand you're using, you want to get the dose per time you're giving it, right, to at least 500 milligrams. And that would be like breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Okay.
Okay.
So, and there's GI this, GI Men, GI Boost, GI this, whatever they're called. There's a ton of different products that have the Mastica. Some companies just sell the Mastica by itself. But that's round one, or thing. And then in order for the mastica to be effective, you need some kind of anti-inflammatory support to calm down the stomach inflammation. So the classic one people use is D-glycerated licorice root. That's not regular licorice root, it's different. This is a DGL is something that's, designed to be comforting on your tummy. A couple of those with each meal. Or I often use this stuff, zinc L-carnosine. And a bunch of different brands will have that. You can use 1 or 2 of those twice a day. But it's something that's specifically, stomach lining calming,
Mm-hmm.
along with the killer, which is the mastica. And these programs usually run for around 2 months. And you stop, give them a month or two to recover, and then retest and make sure you got it.
Okay. Do you ever use a binder?
No,
No. Okay.
I'm kind of anti-binder.
Okay.
It's a personality problem on my part. It's just like because we're always running other protocols with this thing, and so I'm hesitant to just add in a ton of products because it gets to be product overwhelm for people. And you can get away with it without a binder.
Well, I'm thinking of the other opportunistics, like on this test. Sometimes I want to go after those with like intestinal or some products like that, and just wondering about die-off effect, or if you ever
That would
recommend.
happen later. You
Okay.
wouldn't kill both. So, oh yeah, here's a pro tip for the day. Only do H. pylori by itself. Never try to get it in another bug.
Okay.
It just ends badly. It's just too strong. It's too much for people.
Hmm.
You
Okay.
know. And if you're doing the lifestyle stuff and you're controlling their stress and you do this type of a protocol, you can usually get it. If that doesn't work for some reason, you can give a larger dose of mastica, but now you're getting into more likely to have side effects territory. So this would
Hmm.
be like, I don't know, the first 10 or 20 times you try this, I would try it with the lower dose I've got here. If it's really not working, you can bring the dose up, but that would be like a little more advanced,
Okay.
right?
And then do
Awesome.
you retest or always encourage retest?
Yeah, you got to retest, got to make sure it's gone because you can't tell. You can't tell based on symptoms if it's gone or not. That's the whole point, right? You can't
Yeah.
tell. You just can't. Yep. And it's too important to let that go. You want to make sure.
Great.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Oh, you bet. All right, let's see. Got another one here. There are so many people that signed up for this webinar. I can't even tell you. All right. I've got like 1,000 or 2,000 people here. I can't resist. Sign up for the boot camp, you guys. If you're that interested that you're doing this thing, this is H. pylori. It would be like if you were a car mechanic and you just learned how to change tires and you were running a car shop. I mean, you can't just learn H. pylori. You got to learn all the different things. So if you're that interested that you're taking your time to learn H. pylori, sign up for the boot camp. I'll teach you all of this and you'll become like an expert and you'll help a ton of people, which will be a good thing, right? Very good. All right, so let's see. Do we have Cindy? Uh, is Cindy? I'm not sure if Cindy is. Oh, we have 2 Cynthias. Who is this one? Let's see. Cindy G. Julu, are you there? I don't see you. Oh gosh, I can't believe people submitted labs but didn't show up. Okay. Um, Georgie. Let's see. Sorry it's taking me so long here, folks. I thought this would be easier. Georgia or Georgie. There we go. Georgie, I got you unmuted. Let's see. We've got Georgie's lab. As Georgie, let's see, with a B. Oh, Georgia Brown. There it is. I see. Can you believe there's 3 Georgias logged in here? What is with the names today? Georgia, you there? I think I got the right Georgia now. My webinar unmuting skills are being challenged to the max. Georgia Brown, I got you unmuted. No Georgia Brown. Well, this is really not working very well. Hang on a second. I'll just go for interpretation if we can't find some more people here. How about Kenny? And if I've called your name and I haven't been able to unmute you, just send me a little text message and we'll figure it out. Usually, here we have Kenny. Kenny, you there? Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me okay?
Oh, good. We finally got somebody that's got you. Here we go. Tell us about this person.
Wonderful. Yes. So let's see, 35-year-old male, a long-term history of acid reflux and insomnia. Has been in remission for the acid reflux for some time, but first time doing a microbiome test. So Every now and again, we'll get symptoms, chronic loose stool, as well as another symptom. So I think really some of the big findings here were the H. pylori and 2 parasites. So.
Oh, okay. Well, now this is going to be interesting. They have a pretty good diet, I'm assuming?
Yeah, mostly plant-based, but still eats lean animal proteins a few times a week. Yeah, generally low inflammatory diet.
Okay. So Endolimax nana and Entamoeba coli and H. pylori all together. And then as we mentioned earlier, secretory IgA is low. That means that the immune response in the gut lining is weakened, and elastase is low, so they don't have enough pancreatic enzymes. And calprotectin is starting to creep up, so there's a lot of inflammation. And the chief symptoms are
Insomnia, chronic loose stool, and then long-term history of acid reflux issues, though mostly resolved. So.
Okay, so insomnia and loose stool.
Mhm.
Now, and there's 3 infections. This is a bit of a conundrum, you know? So there's a lot of background noise. And if you can mute when there's background noise there. So, okay, so let's figure this out. So the first question that you're all gonna have is, what do you treat first? So in 1992, Dr. Timmons told me, always go for the H. pylori first. Start the stomach and work your way down. So I never questioned him about that. I never said that's a bad idea, that's a good idea. I was just like nodded and said, okay. So I've always done it that way. Out of habit, I don't know why he said that. It makes sense to me because if you have H. pylori and you don't address it, what does it do? It weakens your stomach acid, right? So you don't break down proteins, which is the whole theme of today's talk. So you have amino acid deficiencies that then cause all kinds of other problems because you need amino acids to make proteins. And your commensal bacteria need amino acids. Everybody needs amino acids in there to make things work. However, the other thing that you probably even more often think about stomach acid doing is preventing your body from getting these kinds of infections in the first place. So if you go out to a restaurant and you get some shrimp cocktail and you eat it and it has a parasite in it, Cryptosporidium, and you're chewing on the shrimp cocktail, you swallow it down, now it's in your stomach. Normally, a massive amount of stomach acid just descends on that little shrimp cocktail piece and parasite in it or bacteria in it or whatever bad guy's trying to get in and just chews it up like a bunch of barracudas chewing up somebody, okay? But if you don't have enough stomach acid, then these bad organisms can get into your gut. So leaving H. pylori alone and going after the parasites first runs a risk that they may pick up other infections because they don't have that protection that you need. So anyways, it makes sense. I always do H. pylori first. This person has a history where it makes sense too to go after it, and don't try to do the parasites and the H. pylori at the same time. I've done that many times, but it causes side effects enough times that I would say it's just not worth even trying. I was told that by Timmons, and yet I tried to treat H. pylori and parasites together a ton for years, really. But it blows up on you enough times that it's not worth doing. We're agreeing here H. pylori first and by itself for 2 months, then a pause, a week or 2 off for them to just get a break and get their life together, and then going after the parasites. In fact, and it could be that the H. pylori opened the door for the parasites. They could have gotten the parasites and the H. pylori from the same bad meal. They could have gotten them from different trips overseas. They could have, who knows where all these things came from. Sometimes you can figure it out, sometimes you can't. But you definitely want to get rid of the Endolimax nana and the Entamoeba coli also. Okay, but one at a time. So let me show you like what the protocol looked like. Whoops, sorry, I hit the wrong button there. Where's my protocol thing? There we go. Well, we already talked about the H. pylori protocol, but let's just write it out here. So 1 would be H. pylori herbal treatment for 2 months. If they need a break, give them a break. But then when that is done, then we're going to do the anti-parasitic protocol. And also for 2 months. So for Entamoeba coli and Endolimex nana, I don't think anybody uses medications for those, so you don't even have to decide, should we use an antiparasitic drug or use herbal program? You would just do an herbal program for those two parasites. Neither of them are that hard to kill. So now you're done with the Mastica program. That's all been completed. Now you're going to do a separate 2-month anti-parasite program. It's not usually worth retesting in between because you need to wait a little while after the killing treatment to retest. So it's better just to kill the H. pylori, kill the parasites, and then do the retest. So there's a whole variety of things you can use here. Oregano oil extract is a common one. Sweet wormwood is common. I'm just writing out common ones. Black walnut. Everybody has their favorite. Every company has versions of this. Grapefruit seed extract. That's one of the better ones, I think. A lot of times I use noni. Noni, also known as morinda. That works really well for parasites. Clittle silver. That's kind of controversial. Let's not do that. But that gives you plenty of choices. You want to use 2 or 3 anti-parasitic herbs at the same time to knock this bug out. Usually they're done with meals. It's easier to remember. And someone asked a minute ago, with the H. pylori program, you're supposed to do the Mastica on an empty stomach. Yeah, you are. So Mastica and the anti-parasitic herbs are both considered better absorbed, better working on an empty stomach. So I have 2 problems with that. Number one is people just forget. Trying to get somebody to do something 3 times a day on an empty stomach is really hard. So the odds on them taking it every day, 3 times a day, are just greatly diminished. And it's not going to help if they're doing it on an empty stomach, but then they're not doing it at all, right? So that's one problem. And then the second problem is, especially with H. pylori, a lot of people with H. pylori, their stomach is irritated. We just got an email yesterday, and this woman is nauseous and just feeling like horrible from her Mastica with a meal, okay? So it's a safer and fewer patient complaints if you do the Mastica with food, and it works really well. It has a more immediate and maybe a stronger effect, I'm not sure, on an empty stomach, but I think it's more problematic than it's worth doing that way. Okay, so 2 months on that, 2 months on the herbs, and then you want to wait a month or 2 and then retest and make sure everything's gone. And on the retest, let's pull up this lab again, Kenny. On the retest, what you should see is that the SIG-A is starting to creep up, the calprotectin is starting to creep down, the elastase is starting to sneak up just a little bit. And then you can decide on the retest if there is still some dysbiosis left, if you need to treat it or want to treat it or not. Okay, you don't necessarily have to. And then let me just mention one other thing. If you want it to be kind of a little extra fancy, you could, because of the elastase, include in the entire program some kind of enzymes, digestive enzymes. And a lot of the different digestive enzyme products include HCl, but be careful because if their stomach's really inflamed and irritated, the HCl part of the enzyme formula could make them feel worse. So I would not recommend using HCl with people that have an active H. pylori infection. Usually you can get away with digestive enzymes that have a little HCl in them, but if you want to be extra careful, just exclude HCl. How about we do that? So get a digestive enzyme formula that has no HCl in it so you don't irritate their stomach. You could add that in and give them like one of those with each meal.
It's really perfect you mentioned that because they've had a history of using a digestive enzyme supplement with HCl and reacted poorly to it. So that's helpful.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think this, the do no harm model, like it's 10 times worse to screw somebody up than it is to help them really slowly. You know what I mean? So yeah, you just don't want to screw people up. That is just a basic concept. All right, thank you, Kenny, very much.
Thank you
for submitting that. And let's see, Carly. Now we have a bunch of people that I tried to unmute. We didn't get too far with. Also, there's 1,000 questions that have come in, so I'll flip to questions in a second. But let me just see if I can grab one more lab out of you all. If not, I can just grab one that we don't have a. Is Carly here? Let me see. It's Carly IE. How come we have 2 Carlys? That's fascinating. 2 Carlys, 2 Chelseas, and 3 Georgias. I don't see the other Carly. Okay, I'm assuming that this is a different Carly because she spelled it IE. We have the another one spelling it with a Y. Let me just check one more thing. We'll see if I have one more person or not. Otherwise, I'm going to go for questions. We'll just go for some brainstorming questions. That might be more helpful anyways. You've seen a couple labs already. Let's see. Oh, no, we have Shiva Priya. Shiva Priya, you there? Shiva Priya, I got you unmuted. Shiva Priya, you can unmute yourself. Oh, there you are.
Yeah, I'm here. Thank you.
All right, here we go. It's the test. Ooh, C. diff. What's going on with this person? Oh, can you hear me, Shiva Priya?
Yeah.
I lost you. Oh, yeah. So tell us a little bit about the symptoms. Wow, this is not good. Look at that.
She doesn't have any digestive symptoms so far. Okay, but all the hormones are messed up. Right now, I'm not treating her because she is lactating, breastfeeding.
Okay.
Okay,
So yeah, none of these, I would not do any of these treatments while pregnant or breastfeeding. So that would mean you just have to wait.
yes. So, but still, I just want to get your opinion because a lot of infections are there. She'll be back maybe after 3 months.
Okay, so let's just look at this. Wow. Can I just repeat what you just said, which is there's no digestive symptoms?
Yes.
We have a doctor in my mentorship class. Let's call him Max. That's not his real name. He owns 3 large clinics. He's a very successful doctor and he's a very smart guy. He came down with this horrific skin problem about 6 or 8 months ago. Okay. And I mean, it was serious. Like he went in to see the skin doc, he went to see his dermatology colleague or whatever. And it was like something that, not that you could die from, but maybe like there was a really serious, serious skin problem. He was scared. I was scared. We talked about it in class. I'm like, how the heck did that happen, Max? Like, are you going to die? Like, what's happening here? This is like this rare skin condition. I'm not making this up. Out of desperation and confusion, he ran a GI map. He treated his GI infection, and as he was treating the infection, guess what happened to his skin? It all went away. It all went away. Nobody has any idea why that happened, how that happened. Maybe it was luck. We don't think so. GI problems usually don't cause GI symptoms. They can affect anywhere in your body. And I can't say that enough times because it takes most practitioners at least 2 or 3 years to really believe that. The short version of the story, if you want to just act on that now, just run a GI map on every new patient, whether they have a skin problem or they can't get pregnant, whatever it is, and treat them. And after a couple years of doing that, you'll realize, wow, most of these people that have how many infections here? 1 infection, 2 infections, 3 infections, 4 infections, and we're grouping dysbiosis all together. 5, 6 major infections, no GI symptoms. Okay. And the heart of functional medicine, the soul of functional medicine is a concept that we're not treating symptoms. We're treating function. That's why they call it functional medicine. When I was having an existential crisis in my early 30s, there's a medical doctor that was one of my close sort of confidants, and he was more like a father figure kind of. And I was just so shook up about it and what's going on. And he just looked at me and said, Dan, that's why they call it medicine. We prescribe medicine. That's my job as a medical doctor. He kind of shook me out of this, like, oh, okay, that's why they call it medicine. Why do we call it functional medicine? Because we're not interested in symptoms. We're interested in function. It's a test for function. It is not a symptomatic test. And it turns out that your gut controls every body function. And all you have to do is look at the research coming out in the microbiome now to see that. Neurological function, immune function, brain function, heart function, metabolic function. There's research studies more than you could ever read on all of those subject areas because your gut controls all those, okay? So it almost doesn't matter what the symptoms are. We're gonna fix these infections. I think we've already kind of given this one away, right? That you would start with the H. pylori first after she's no longer breastfeeding. Do that exact same protocol, then skip over to the anti-parasitic second.
Okay.
Again, with endolamics, nana, and blastocystis, people don't really use antibiotics, so you're probably stuck using the herbs with that as well.
Okay.
And then now C. diff you can clear out with Saccharomyces boulardii. So that's the one new thing here. So let's just cover off on that. So it's the same protocol, right? It's the same thing. This thing for 2 months, then this thing for 2 months, and then on the C. diff side, you want to use S. boulardii, and it's 2 weeks, and then 2 weeks, and then 2 weeks, like that. So you start with a really high dose. Usually people do like 3 times a day, but just for 2 weeks. And then you cut that in half to 2, 3 times a day, and then you cut that in half again. Something like this. It's just sort of a tapered program, starting with 12 a day, then 6 a day, then 3 a day, depending on how they respond. But the Sac boulardii will flush out or physically displace the C. diff. And it's important to note that on this particular patient, there's 2, obviously they test for 2 C. diff toxins, toxins A and B. If only one toxin is positive, you can get it with the S. boulardii. If both toxins are positive, that can be a pretty serious medical condition, and that requires like referral to a GI doctor because that can be a big problem. And so if toxin A and B are both positive, sometimes people need to be treated with medication for that. Okay. And the C. diff would
Yeah.
come at the end. The C. diff would come at the end. And what you should notice in someone that has all 3 of these, well, and then she has dysbiosis. Oh my gosh. So most of the time, if you get rid of the H. pylori and the parasites and the C. diff, most of the time, the dysbiosis starts to get better on its own. So I wouldn't do a whole separate program for that. I would do the H. pylori, do the parasites, do the C. diff, and then stop and retest and see where she's at.
Okay. Okay.
Okay.
Shall I ask you one thing? Yeah. If I put
Yeah.
someone on DGL, it aggravates the acid reflux. What could be the reason for it, especially this DGL?
Well, yeah, they could be allergic to it or something odd like that. That's pretty unusual. If that happens, just use something like the zinc L-carnosine as an alternative to help with the anti-inflammatory effect.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you
Oh,
so
you
much.
bet. All right, so now we've got a few minutes left. I'm going to go through questions here, and let's start at the top. Oh, and before we get to questions, you guys, how many times do I have to say this? Sign up for the boot camp. This is like an active and interested group. Any of you guys that are disinterested in this stuff, just sign up for the class. We'll teach you all this. You'll have 2 months of just getting into GI map testing. At the end of that, you'll feel like, oh gosh, I actually really know something now. This is like, you got to see a high volume of cases. You can't see, like when I used to work at the lab, one of these labs I worked at years ago, we would call people onesie twosies if they ordered like 1 or 2 labs a month, because they never really learned how to do the work. You need high volume. And if you're not doing 10 or 20 GI maps every month in your clinic, you're never going to learn how this actually works. But if you take the boot camp, forget about my amazing lectures and my sterling personality and all the great stuff that I embody. Forget about that. It's just the volume of testing that the students submit. Kind of like today, you'll see test after test after test after test of other people's tests. And at the end of the class, because we're doing these live Q&A calls with your guys' labs, at the end of the class, you've seen a ton of the labs from other people, but that gets stuck in your head just like if it was your own patient. So it's like a crash course that gives you years of clinical experience. In my mentorship course, we estimate if you do the 1-year program with me, by the end of the class, you've seen at least 500 cases just live on the calls, okay? And at that point, people are just good. You take one of my mentorship graduates, you can put them up against any experienced functional medicine doc, and unless they've had 500 cases recently, you know, my graduates are just going to smoke them. And it's the same here. It's just a volume thing. You just have to see a lot of these tests to learn how to do this. And it's hard to get 500 of your own patients to do the testing. So you just take these classes, you get access to all these other patients, right? That may not be obvious. So let's see, answer questions here. Yes, we will record this and we will send out copies in the next day or so for you guys. Can H. pylori cause imbalance in sugars for type 2 diabetes? Absolutely, because all the metabolic functions in your body that are regulating blood sugar are enzymes that are made from protein. So you often will see inflammation and tissue damage from the H. pylori that's damaging the person's metabolism. That's common. Now, if someone keeps showing up for H. pylori, even though they've been treated several times, that's a whole different thing. That means you need to take a deep step back, a deep breath, take a step back, take a deep breath, and rethink the whole thing. Okay, because you obviously don't want to get in that position in the first place. But then you have to address the stress response and other variables and set that person up so you can kill the H. pylori. If you do an extensive adrenal program or de-stressing program first, and you get the inflammation down and you get the person's SIG-A up, how do we get SIG-A up? By doing the adrenal program. Then when you go to kill the H. pylori, you're much more likely to be successful. And if you rush into it, if you just see H. pylori and then treat it without the preparatory work, you're going to end up in this bind that was just mentioned in this question where the person's treatment resistant, and then you have to kind of back up, and it puts you back, it puts you behind. It's still doable though. I've had a gazillion patients that have been in that position that we've been able to help. Just have to be a little more creative with your approach. Can H. pylori cause problems with thyroid? Yes. Not always, but it definitely can. It's common, I would say, but not expected. H. pylori and PCOS and weight gain? Yeah, absolutely. Because think about it. What is PCOS in the first place? It's unstable blood sugar. It's an inflammatory response. It's dragging the female hormones into it. H. pylori, let's just talk about for females, the worse that the H. pylori problem becomes, the more screwed up your female hormones become. That's true for a younger female that has PCOS. That's true for a middle-aged female that has perimenopausal symptoms. It's true for women of all ages. The more screwed up your H. pylori is, the more it's caused inflammation and tissue damage, the more screwed up your female hormones are going to be. It's guaranteed. That connection is direct and consistent. Okay. But these are really good questions, you guys. Oh yeah, let's see. If you give the person supplemental iron, I don't know about that. I'm not sure how to answer that. So what causes low SIG-A? What causes low SIG-A? Who knows? Somebody type in an answer to that one. What causes low SIG-A? Low SIG-A is caused by stress. Okay, that's why we do the adrenal programs. Now, low SIG-A can also be caused by a long-term infection. So if you had H. pylori for long enough, that could lower your SIG-A too. Yeah, you can, and this is Alexandra's question, you can absolutely, yes, use amino acids, free-form amino acids, to help support people while you're doing the H. pylori treatment. That is an excellent idea, and they will feel better if you do that. Free-form amino acids in a powder, short-term. Now, if they react poorly to the amino acids in a powder, it's usually because of some kind of dysbiosis, so you can't always get away with that, but sometimes you can. So, question if the GI map test is positive, but they have a blood test for H. pylori and it looks normal, or they have a breath test for H. pylori and it looks normal, or they have a biopsy and it looks normal. Let's think about that. What is this test? The GI map is a PCR test. polymerase chain reaction test. I actually know of, but never met, the scientist that invented PCR, because my brother-in-law was his patent attorney, which is kind of cool, random thing. Anyways, that guy's like a gazillionaire, billionaire kind of thing. This was like back in the 80s. So it's a DNA test. If you've ever watched any kind of crime show on TV and there's like a hair in the trunk, and they're like, oh, we'll take that to the lab. Or God forbid, there's a bunch of blood that drops somewhere, you know, or the blood is on this person's shirt, and they're like, oh, we're gonna run the DNA on that. And then it comes back and they're like, okay, you're going to jail for the rest of your life. So DNA evidence is definitive. DNA is not ambiguous. DNA doesn't like, you can't get DNA testing wrong. That's why PCR is so amazing. If you have a positive H. pylori on a GI map, it means that the lab saw the DNA of H. pylori in that sample. That means they have H. pylori at that moment, and there's no other possibility unless someone tampered with the sample. If the person collected the stool sample and then some nefarious person found some H. pylori and stuck it in there, they could get it wrong. But unless there is some criminal activity to screw up the accuracy of the test, the GI map, or forget the GI map, it's PCR that matters. The PCR version of this test, you have the DNA, you got the infection. What's wrong with the blood work? It's antibodies. Antibodies can go up and they can go down. So if you've had H. pylori for a long time, you may or may not see it on the antibodies. You could even have high antibodies and no longer have H. pylori. That is a possibility too. The breath test is designed for acute infections, like you just got it, not you got it 12 years ago. And a biopsy, which is supposed to be the gold standard, misses H. pylori all the time. How do I know that? Because when PCR first came out, I'm old, okay, I'm 60. When PCR first came out, I was running antibody tests and we were having people do biopsies like everyone else did to find H. pylori. And I compared for years, for like 2 or 3 years, I wouldn't just stop the old tests. I was just like, I'm a very stubborn and sometimes irrational person. So I was running PCR with the blood work, and I just saw over and over and over again where PCR would find it and the blood work would miss it. So I just finally threw up my hands and said, forget it. We're not going to do both tests anymore, and let's just do one. But I ran those tests side by side for a long time. So you're very often going to be in a position where PCR, the GI map, finds the H. pylori, and an antibody test or blood test misses it, a breath test misses it, or even a biopsy misses it. So just treat, and you'll see what I mean. So SIG-A is a main regulator of, cortisol is the main regulator of SIG-A. So if we're trying to improve SIG-A, we want to work on cortisol, and that's the warm up before we have to go after killing the H. pylori. I don't have any experience with metformin to clean up gut dysbiosis. Sounds a little strange, but I don't know. I don't know. I would only use a prescription medication if I had to. That seems like there's many other easier ways to fix it. Biofilm we talked about. What if they don't want to treat? It's a free country, you know. People don't have to treat if they're just going to walk around with H. pylori. I wouldn't let them back in the clinic again. You don't want to get it from them, or don't kiss them, you know, like whatever. But yeah, I mean, you can't force people to do these things. You have to kind of, but if you explain it really well, and this is where the patient management, patient education comes in. If you explain it really well, you should get most people to actually go for it. Okay, so now I'm going to pause for a second because we're at the hour and we're supposed to stop. There are so many questions, however, that I'm going to keep going. I understand many of you have to leave now because you have patients probably that are waiting for you. This is going to be recorded. I'm going to keep going with the questions because there's a lot of good ones. But check out if you need to. You can get the recording in a day or two if you want to listen to the answers to the questions. You know, you can do that later, right? So we're going to go into an extended period. This is like overtime in a basketball game. Now we're getting a little more exciting here. It's overtime, all right? The H. pylori stool antigen test is good, very good. Stool antigen is very good, yes. Stephen asked that. It's an excellent test. For children, so if someone is testing positive for it, then and there's a family and they're living together, sharing a kitchen, if it's a couple and they're having sex together and sleeping together, you got to test everybody because you can get H. pylori from kissing. Oftentimes you'll see, and you can get it from the kissing that you do with a little baby. You know, you can. So we've had 2, 3, 4-year-old kids with H. pylori from the parent. So you can get H. pylori pretty easily. Whether it's causing a problem or not is a whole other thing. So I totally support Biocidin as a company. The Biocidin products Marco's asking at are just great. It's a great group of people. It's a great company. All the stuff they carry is really good. And I wouldn't say that about too many supplement companies. So Biocidin has a pretty small supplement line, but the things they make are extremely good. Oh, this is a tough one. So Elizabeth, this is the hardest question. Thank you, Elizabeth. So I'm glad for those of you that stayed this long. This is the hardest question. I'm going to read it out, Elizabeth. Can you please address H. pylori that is not high, but present at mid-range? So what she means by that is the GI map is a PCR test. It's quantitative. It's not like a yes or no, but they're looking for the DNA and they amplify it and they have to get to a certain number to officially diagnose H. pylori. But sometimes you're going to see H. pylori present, but not above the reference range, so there's no red H there. It won't say high, but it's there. What do you do in that case? It's hard. It's a hard one. What do I do? A lot of people would not treat it because it's not officially a high marker. What I do is I always would just do the mastica. I would never recommend antibiotics in that situation, but I would always use the mastica. And the why do I think that's okay? Because mastica is actually doesn't have a downside to it. It's really good for you in general. People take it as just a longevity product, even if they don't have stomach problems. So I don't see mastica. If you're making a mistake and you didn't need to do the treatment, I don't see mastica as having a big downside to it. Okay. If you guys are into biofilms, do the biofilms. You know, I have no problem with that. I just, again, it's mostly a supplement volume question there. Let's see. A couple more questions here. Let's see here. So there are times when it's appropriate to do medications. I had a group of professional hockey players years ago in my practice, and what I learned from them is that when they're in the middle of hockey season, they are not okay with having a bunch of herbs that they have to take in the locker room with all the guys looking at them. And one of these guys was just told me, he's like straight up, I can't take these herbs, Kalish. Like I get my ass kicked. Like, can I just take the medication? I'm like, okay, take the medication, go play hockey, whatever your culture is like. I'm fine with that. I've had women who have said, I want to get pregnant in like 3 months. This herbal program is going to drag on forever. Can I just take the antibiotics? Like, okay, well, maybe that's appropriate for you. If the symptoms are severe enough and the patient's in a rush, and then some people, they just don't want to take the herbs. They're kind of anti-herb. I'm like, fine, you can take the antibiotics. I would only use the antibiotics if you have to, and only if there's, they're exhibiting a ton of symptoms, because you don't want to use those antibiotics and sort of burn through a person's potential to clear a later infection later on in their life, right? When we can get it with the herbs so well. And probably in my practice, it's probably 10% of people using antibiotics. It's not super common, but we definitely have that. This is the most questions I've ever seen on any webinar I've ever done, and I've been doing this since 2006. So I'm just kind of looking at the clock here and thinking, I don't know if I can keep going, but I'm just going to keep going. And some of you are still listening, so I'm just going to keep going. I understand most of you need to go away, and you probably have other things to do, but I'm not going to stop. Let's see. Oh, because some of these are really good questions. Oh yeah, Sarah. Okay, Sarah, this is a great question. What do you think is the most common cause of recurring H. pylori infection? Do you think maybe it was never fully gone in the first place? Or do you think, yeah, so absolutely yes. You can knock H. pylori down but not get it, and then it can come back. That's probably more likely than getting it again, unless the person has a spouse that they're kissing regularly that has it. I had this older couple, they were like in their 80s, and the wife tested and had H. pylori, and we got rid of it. Great story, symptoms all gone, amazing life change. And then a few months later, she's back. I'm like, Rosa, you're back. She's like, yeah, I think I have it back again. And we're like, oh, bummer. And we looked and she had it back again. And we retested. I was like, wow, we treated it. We got rid of it. It was bet you were gone. You were 100% better. She's like, I know. And then she's pointing at her husband sitting next to her, saying, I think I got it from him. And she was not happy about this. This was clearly something that they had discussed and she was pissed off. She's like, I want you to test him. If he has it, he has to do the treatment. And he was like, not fighting on that one. Turned out we got rid of it in her. She kissed her husband. At least they were kissing. That's cute, right? And then boom, she got it right back. So you got to screen the other people that are involved, because you can have the one person who's highly symptomatic from it. You can have an asymptomatic carrier, but you got to check the family and just see who's got it, who doesn't. And sometimes, the partner many times will treat, and like he's like, I'm fine, I don't feel any problem. He's like, okay, I'm still going to do the treatment. Absolutely you are, because you're just doing it so your wife doesn't get it back from you, just so the transmission stops. Let's see. You can use other things to raise the stomach acid, like apple cider vinegar. It's fine. You don't have to give the enzymes. There's other ways to do that. Bitters, apple cider vinegar, all that kind of stuff. Let's see. So DGL is usually dosed. Most of the capsules are tablets, or they're chewables usually. They're pretty big, so it's like 1 or 2 with each meal. The zinc carnosine that I use is from Pure Encapsulations. That's 2 twice a day. But everybody carries the DGL. It's usually 1 or 2 with each meal, so we're typical. Can you treat H. pylori and blasto at the same time with Massica? No, I have not had success with that. Massica seems to just work against H. pylori from what I can tell. Doesn't seem to really clear out all these other bugs. All right, let's see. Oh my gosh, there's so many. There's like literally hundreds of questions, you guys. I think I'm gonna have to pause now. We're way over time. Okay, thank you guys so much for participating. This is probably not probably, this is by far the most active and involved group that I've ever had a free webinar with. So thank you for showing up. Sign up for one of these classes and we'll be able to do this on a regular basis. Take care, everyone. Great to talk with you. Bye for now.